Hello, in this tutorial we'll try to recreate these continuously changing patterns based on proximity to some attractors. So let's jump to it, go to the solid view. A couple of options I'm using. So for the overlay, I am enabling the wireframe in the solid view, and also I am in this viewport shading, I'm enabling matcap and I'm choosing this one. You can choose whatever you want. So let's start based on this model that I am providing, which is a low poly sub D. I can tab into edit mode to see what we have here. So we can see the creases. So first we start by Shift D in the Y axis, copying it, and then we assign various materials. In the material slot we have nothing, so we would add a default material, which should be this one, any material. Then we will be dividing this structure based on the material. So we'll tap to edit mode and we'll try to select a couple of ways to quickly select various faces in 3 selection mode. When I press Alt and I select a face, it selects the whole loop based on the direction. Then Shift, while pressing Alt and Shift, I can select both loops and assign a material to them by adding a new material to the slots. Like these ones, I'll make them in quads. I already have quad material and I will assign it. And the color changes in the viewport. To change the color, you just go down in the material properties here and the viewport display, then you can change the color, or you can even change the opacity from here. This is just for viewport display. And tap back to object mode and we see that we have the material distinct. I can go, like for instance, in like to select another technique like the Alt is when I click here and I press Control, I select the nearest, the closest path to the next surface I'm selecting, holding Control and selecting the next, so I can quickly select faces. And then I can assign a new material here, plus to create a new material slot. Then I choose another one. Let's say I want to decimate the geometry here to create that Voronoi rounded effect that we saw in the beginning, and I will assign it. And again, the same thing. If we want a color, it's the same option. So we continue with this and we can quickly select similar materials and hide them so that we have just the left surfaces. To do that, F3 while selecting a face, similar material, and it selects similar material and I hide it. This is just hidden in the edit mode, but it still exists in the object mode. I'll tap back to the edit mode. Again, I'll select this one, F3, select material, hide. So I have this part left. If I click here and I want to select this part that is left, I just press L and it selects all of it, and I can assign a new material to it by plus. Let's say this one will be tries, and I will assign it. And that's it. Tab to back to object mode and I have them all assigned. Tab to edit mode and I will Alt H to unhide everything, and then I will then press I need to assign all of them, but I already have them assigned, so I just copy this one, Shift T X, bring it over here, and then I tab to edit mode, P, and separate by material. So each material will be separated. While they are selected, I will press M to create, I should go back to the object mode, tab to object mode, then press M while they are all selected, and go to new collection, and I will call it parts. Okay, and we have now a new collection called parts that has all the various built-in parts. And now we can start to create proximity based shapes. So I'll start by this first wireframe one, the first one that I will apply wireframe to. Shift A, wireframe, and then we can see that I can edit the wireframe thickness here, but I want it to be based on the proximity to this green part. So I'll go to the vertex groups, add a proximity vertex group, and then I'll go back to the modifiers and I will add Shift A, weight, edit, and I will make all the proximity group 1 and group add threshold 0. This is just to reset it to 1, and I will apply this modifier before the wireframe because the wireframe will be using it. The same thing, weight proximity, and this is the main vertex weight proximity, and this will actually do the measuring. I'll put it before the wireframe, and it will edit the proximity group that we just initialized to 1. And then the target object that we will measure the distance from is this one. And then proximity mode geometry. And then we can visualize what's happening by going to the weight paint. This is just to visualize. You can see, like, this is the proximity. The highest is this value, which is 1, and the lowest gets 1. So whatever happens here, it's the lowest is 0, the highest is 1, and we can click on normalize, so it's between 0 and 1. It's based on the distance to this green part here. So this will be used by the next modifier, which is the wireframe, to size the wireframe frame size. So I'll go back to the object mode, and then I will indicate in the wireframe that I'm using a vertex group, which is the proximity that I just modified before, and you can see how it changes here. So by increasing the thickness, I can invert it by having the middle, the lowest higher, and like 0, I'm inverting it so that I have less thickness in the middle. And then I make sure in the wireframe modifier that you adjust this offset so that you can align it to the other surfaces. So let's move on. Let's move to the next panel, this one. So for this one, we will be using a quads proximity. So I will shift add the same thing. I can copy the same weight edit and weight proximity that I had. I will click on this first one, the green one, then the previous one while holding shift, and I will click on weight edit, this arrow copy to selected, weight proximity, this arrow copy to selected, and then we'll go back to the green one, and here our attractors, shift right click somewhere, I might shift right click here in that corner, shift A, cube, I'll scale it, apply the scale, and J, shift Z. So based on this one, the proximity will be calculated. I'll click on this panel, I edit this one to be linked to the object, and then if I go to the weight paint, I can adjust the weight paint, and I make it the fall off instead of linear to be smooth. This will give a better transition. So, and based on this, I'll go back to the object mode again. I will create a new node, which is a geo node that will create the quads geometry node, and I'll create a new one. I'll call it quad attractors, and then whatever viewport you have here or whatever panel, just click on the corner and change it to geometry nodes. So while clicking on the geometry nodes modifier, we will have the geometry input will be changed, and we'll get a different output. So the change that we will do a procedural inset. Shift A, extrude mesh. So this will extrude each individual mesh based on an offset. What we care about is just the top. Shift A, scale element. Shift A, scale element. So I will scale only the top one with this selection, and you will see when I reduce the scale, I will get those spikes. So the idea is I don't want to offset, I just want to remove this top area. So I remove it, Shift A, delete geometry, and I will delete the top faces here. Choose face and go to selection, select it by the top one, and you will get like the spikes are empty now. There's no faces in the spikes. So what I want to do is that the offset will be 0. So I will have like no extrusion, just a scaling of the inset and removing it. This is, I'll press M while selecting delete geometry, mute it, not deleted, deleted, not deleted, deleted. So this scale will be based on the proximity to the cube I just created. To do that, because I already have the vertex group assigned in the stack of modifiers, I will just press Shift A and I will call named attribute node here. And this attribute that I want is the proximity, and I will plug the attribute in the scale, and you will see that the scale will change according to the proximity to the cube. You can see that. If I give this a solid modifier, a solidify modifier, I can give it kind of a thickness, and Shift Alt Z to remove the overlay so that we can see how it's working. And now if I Shift Alt Z, if I click on the cube, J, Shift Z, while I'm moving it, we see how the shape of the quads is changing. If I want to increase or decrease the subdivision, I'll go to the subdivision modifier here of the of this part, and I will lower the subdivision. Now we have more obvious quads. And I can also click right and choose Shade Auto Smooth to smooth the surfaces that are almost curved. So we'll try now to see the other modifiers. Let's change this one. This one will be tries. So the same technique applies to this one. So I will click Shift while click Shift in this one, click Shift in this one and Shift in the previous one, and I will copy the weight edit, copy to selected, and I will copy proximity, copy to selected, and I will also copy the geometry nodes. So I will have the same thing applied to the second one. I'll select the yellow one again, and here we don't have a proximity group because it's not created yet. We just created, and it will get initialized proximity, and now we see it's working. I just need to lower the subdivision in the modifier, and here it is. Now we want this to be tries, so we just click on this and we go to the modifier stack and we go to the geonodes, and I will duplicate this one and I will create a new one, tries proximity something, and while clicking on this I have tilde key, frame all to see everything, and here in the beginning I will triangulate, Shift A, triangulate, and I will just put this node here and it will give me triangle shape. And based on the proximity again, J, Z, it's the same one controlling both of them, but I will invert it now. So for this one I will change the vertex proximity, so it will be here 50 and here it will be 0, so it will be inverted, so the farther the more opening we have. Next one is same process, so this will do hexagons here, and for this we'll do hexagons here. I'll save it and I will duplicate this cube, Shift T, Shift Z. I'll duplicate this group to have like hexagons opening more here, or the opposite. I'll click on this one and I'll click on the previous one just to copy what I had. So I will copy the vertex edit, copy to selected, copy the proximity, and copy also the base geometry nodes. We'll be using it again. And then I will click on this red orangey one and I will add a vertex proximity, vertex group proximity, nice. And then I will change in the proximity weight to which cube it's reacting. I want it to be reacting to this one. Now it's reacting to this cube, and I will lower again the subdivision a little bit. But for this one we'll use a technique where we when we triangulate we do dual mesh, Shift A, dual mesh, that will convert edges to faces, to convert faces to points, and this will give us from tries hexagons. Dual, not this one, Shift A, dual, it's in mesh operation dual, Shift 3. Always I'm looking for them, Shift A. Put it here and I will keep the boundaries, and you can see that we have this hexagon shape. And I will invert this one again, proximity weight, I'll do 50, then 0. And you can see how far away the openings can go from the... What's interesting is that this is based on the proximity to this cube. So if I tab, oh, this is too big, I can adjust this by adding in the tries proximity. No, this is not tries proximity. Oh, I actually edited the previous one. That's fine. I didn't duplicate this to hexagons. I forgot to duplicate the geometry nodes. So for this one, what I can do, Shift A, and I will edit the range, because the range of the proximity is between 1 and 0. So I will edit it so that I have, instead of 1, I'll just put 0.9. so I don't have this like completely scaled up. Just 0.9, or I can just, like, this is the what one will be gain, like the scale of the apertures. I'll put it 0.9. And then if I click this one, I can tab to edit mode and actually select this cube, L to select all of it, and Shift D, Shift Z. So I'm adding geometry here. I'm adding geometry. So tab to object models. This is the same object, the same geometry, but it has two distinct separate geometries inside. So I can use that because I can adjust the proximity to all parts of this. And like the geometry could be anything. Like it could be actually a face. I can actually just duplicate this face, Shift D, and I'll drag it over here or over here. It could be anything, like any geometry in this inside of this object that I'm, or this object that becomes a tractor. And I can invert it, of course, again by doing here 40 and here 0. Oh, I mean 40 in the farthest, 40 in the lowest, and I'm inverting the attractors. The last technique we'll look at is decimating the geometry to get a Voronoi-like shape. So for this one, what I can do, I will duplicate this cube again, Shift T, Shift Z to duplicate in the same plane, and I will use this one now. I'll click this one, then shift the other one, and I will copy the main, copy, weight edit, copy proximity to selected, and I'm not using geometry nodes for this one, we don't need to. So with this one, what we will be doing is that I need to add proximity group again for this one, proximity, and so that we get the weights, and the weight will be based, of course, on this new one created, this opening here. So I will disable optimal display so that we can see what's happening. So I will decimate this geometry based on the lower the number of vertices and edges based on the proximity to this cube. So how would I do that? Shift A, decimate modifier, and then as I lower this one, you see how I have less geometry. I'm just reducing it, and I can also add here, I will add a geometry nodes just for the dual mesh. I will add a geometry node, create a new one, I'll call it dual mesh only. It's just for the dual mesh because I want the tris. I'll go to decimate and I check triangulate, so the resulting geometry will be always triangulated. The idea is I want to get like a Voronoi-like, so when I dual mesh a random triangulation, it will give me a Voronoi-like shape. I click on the geometry node, Shift tilde key, frame all, Shift A, and I will add just dual mesh. I just want the dual mesh operation only while keeping the boundaries, and you will see this pattern. It's a random hexagon that looks like, I'll go to the wireframe, it's a random hexagon that looks like a Voronoi. So if I decrease the ratio of decimation, you see what's happening. So I will base this on the proximity. Click on this. To be able to see it better, I will add a wireframe, Shift A, wireframe, and I will get only the wireframe of this resulting. So then I will edit the proximity. I will go to the decimate modifier, and the ratio will be based on the vertex group proximity. So if I take this cube and I move it Shift Z near to it, like it will have, oh, I need to change the weights. So the weights, it will be, I'll just change them 0, so 40 to 0. So as the cube goes near, I can't see it well here, maybe if I add a plane, Shift E, plane, scale, and N to go to the item properties, put it in the, not item, yeah, per item 0 to, so the plane I want it on the ground, N. So here I hope we can see it better, or I will go to the render mode maybe. So here, as I'm moving J, Z, you see how it's decimated based on the proximity to this cube. or I can make this, I'll go to another view maybe. This shows it a little bit better. Or I can change the material here. Rough. It's not doing anything. Yeah. Okay, so here I'll increase the thickness again in the wireframe. And I can even, after the wireframe, and be cautious when doing this, Shift A, subdivide modifier, subdivide surface at the end, and I'll just add one. And you can see I'll just add a little bit more. And you can see I have like JZ, I have a Voronoi that is based on the distance to the cube. At the end, if you want the previous shape to be here as a glass, we can take the Shift D, Y, and I can select it and select anything here. Control C and do copy location. To use this, you need to have preferences. You need to have copy attribute installed. Copy attribute menu. You can install it from the extension. And then Control C, copy location, and it will put it there. But as you see, it will hide the other geometry. So what I will do is I will click on this one, tab to edit mode. I'll select everything with Shift A, and I will do Alt S to shrink. And I'll just click anywhere, any value, and then I will manually set it to -0.5 maybe, and check if it's working. Yeah, -0.5 is working. And then tab to go back, and I will give it a glass material. I'll create a quick glass material, glazing, and make it blue in the viewport, and make it a little bit transparent with the alpha, more bluish. This is Shift Alt Z to hide the overlays, and this is like the results with the various quads, hexagons, tris, and Voronoi, and multiple attractors effects. Thank you for following.